TNA had a pay-per-view last night, and it's been a month or two since I last checked in with TNA, so I thought I'd check out this show and see what's popping, and definitely a lot happened on this show to talk about, and it had me thinking about the current state of TNA right now. So like the video and let's talk about it. Let's talk about TNA Rebellion 2024 and what on earth TNA is cooking right now. Alright, we're going to discuss each match one by one from last night's show. We're not going to go too in depth though, just discussing the main highlights and the main talking points of the show. There was a pre-show with 3 matches on it. There was 11 matches in total on this card, but on this pre-show we had the Rascals being defeated by Ace Austin, Chris Bay, and Leon Slater. Awesome to see Leon Slater on the show. I've watched him at so many shows local here in the UK. He does an awesome 450 swanton. They picked up the win. It was a good match. You had Laredo Kid defeating Crazy Steve for the digital media title. This was the only title change of the night. Spoilers. And I'm just glad we're finally free from the shackles of this Tommy Dreamer, Crazy Steve verse that the digital media title was going through. Laredo Kid is a good, exciting talent to hold this title, and thank God it's just away from Dreamer and anything he's doing. Then you had Spitfire, which is the team made up of Danny Luna and Jody Threat, who were defending their Knockouts tag team titles against Decay, Rosemary, and Jessica Havoc. And Spitfire came out with Lars Fredriksson, who, as I'm aware, is a member of the band Rancid, so that is a really cool thing there. Rancid are a punk band, so them crossing over with Spitfire makes sense. Cool crossover here, and they defeat Decay. It was a decent little match. Danny Luna, really great talent, another talent here in the UK who I've seen a few times. Brilliant to see her in TNA. And then we get to the actual main card itself, as the show opens with Mustafa Ali and Jake Something for the X Division title. This was a fun match between these two guys. These are two really great talents and really great guys to have in the X Division. It's old school TNA X Division vibes. Mustafa Ali, of course, picks up the victory. I hope he holds this X Division title for a while, or drops it and does maybe an option C to get the World Championship. That would be pretty cool. He is a world champion level wrestler, so he does deserve that. Then you had Rich Swann and Joe Hendry having a match. Joe Hendry still as over as ever in TNA, so good for him on that. Rich Swann now in a tag team with AJ Francis, the former Top Dollar. And this match had some shenanigans from Sean Merriman, who's an American football player who obviously I'm not familiar with. And he got involved in this match, squaring up to AJ Francis before swerving everyone and then punching out Joe Hendry and giving the win to Rich Swann. I don't know if Sean Merriman is maybe getting involved with TNA and AJ Francis' group. In research, I found that he actually made sporadic WWE appearances, but they couldn't come to an agreement, so maybe TNA has decided to scoop him. I could see that. Regardless, we then had Kaz versus Eric Young, which was a Full Metal Mayhem match. These are two TNA originals doing a TNA original match stipulation. Just love to see it. I liked this match a lot. And this is the side of TNA that definitely needs to be kept around. Just keep as many OG TNA talents as you can. Guys like Kaz, guys like Eric Young, they need to stick around for as long as they can. You then had Steve Macklin coming out to cut a promo, and he started trying to hold up the show and started talking about his contract expiring and breaking the fourth wall, talking about stuff like that. And he's interrupted by Santino Marella, who's like the authority figure of TNA, and he comes out and he says, well, you're not keen on wrestling. I have someone who has just signed a contract moments ago, and they are very eager to introduce themselves and wrestle right now. And out comes Santana, of course, fresh off leaving AEW and former TNA wrestler himself. He's now returned on his own, as Ortiz is still in AEW and they aren't a tag team anymore. Of course, when Santana was last in TNA, it was in a tag team with Ortiz, where they had that legendary feud with the Lucha Bros over the tag titles, and they did a lot of fun stuff in TNA. And now, here he is, Santana back on his own in TNA. I'm very interested to see how this goes. Regardless though, Mike Santana and Steve Macklin, they have a match, and Mike Santana reintroduces himself in a big way to the TNA Impact world by getting the win. Like I said, man, I'm interested to see what they do with Santana. I think he could probably be a good asset to the X Division. As of right now, him and Mustafa Ali could probably cook up something fun. So I think that is how I would utilize Santana if I was the TNA booker. but time will tell how TNA choose to use him. Anyway, next up we had the tag team titles match. It was the System, who are Brian Myers and Eddie Edwards. They're part of a trio alongside Moose, who is the world champion, and they are of course the tag champions, defending against Speedball Mountain, made up of Speedball Mike Bailey and the former Mustache Mountain tag team member Trent Seven. I gotta say, man, I think the Impact tag division, or the TNA tag division even, has kind of fallen off a bit. I think Motor City Machine Guns are obviously on their way out, and we're about to lose them as a tag team, which is a really big tag team to lose. And we've also seen them lose tag teams over the years, such as the North, after Ethan Page obviously left. And both these two teams here are two just put together randomly recently teams. Like, there's no actual OG long-time tag teams competing for the titles right now, which on its own actually isn't an issue, but me personally, I'm just not feeling either of these teams. I think both these teams, all of them, are better off as singles guys, especially Speedball Mountain. I think Mike Bailey should be going for the world title, not in a random put-together team with Trent Seven. Regardless though, the System retained because, as I spoiled earlier in the video, all the champions except the Digital Media Championship were retained. Up next, we have Josh Alexander versus Alexander Hammerstone, or I think he's just known as Hammerstone in TNA. This was a main event worthy match between two main event worthy talent. It was a last man standing match, a real feud ender, and it feels like this feud is probably over now after this match here. I know they've had a few matches, and Josh Alexander did pick up the win after thumbtack, some crazy spots, and of course Hammerstone not beating the 10. And I really wonder what's next for both these two. Obviously Josh Alexander, he had his contract extension triggered by TNA, so I wonder how much they're going to push him in this final year that he's probably going to spend here, if they're going to put him back up to the main event division. I'm sure they will. I'm sure he'll probably get a world title program growing soon, but maybe not at the moment, because spoiler alert for what we're going to see later in the show, but we'll get there. You had Jordan Grace versus Steph DeLander next for the Knockouts title. This entire build-up ended up being very unlucky. Steph DeLander returned to TNA and got the win in a #1 contenders match with help from Matt Cardona, who was returning to TNA. But unfortunately, Matt Cardona has got injured recently. He has to get surgery. He's going to be out for a while. And so the build to this and this match itself was a bit compromised. Steph DeLander in the end recruited the Good Hands, who are a TNA tag team she hired to be at ringside instead of Cardona. I don't know what Steph DeLander's status is with TNA, if she's just a one-offer, because Cardona, as far as I'm aware, is, because he's a free agent according to himself. So I have a feeling Steph DeLander might be gone after this, and she might have just been a one-off. But regardless, this match was full of mayhem. You had Big Con, aka Connor from the Ascension, if you remember him, coming out and fighting PCO. They're just getting involved now, and the Good Hands are also getting involved. He was about to kill Jordan Grace before the lights went out, and Sami Callihan returned and took out Con and the Good Hands. I don't know why this needed to happen during the women's match, but it did. So yeah, that's the second return of the show, is Sami Callihan. I wasn't expecting him to return on this show. To be fair, I'm not surprised he returned. When he left TNA in the first place, I was sure he'd probably come back at some point. It wasn't really teased or anything for this show. I wasn't really expecting it, but there it was. It is what it is. I don't know if Sami Callihan is still a world champion level wrestler or how they want to use him. So it will be interesting to see where he goes from here. But we move on to the main event, as it's the TNA World Championship. It's Moose versus Nick Nemeth. Nick Nemeth, of course, formerly Dolph Ziggler, getting his big TNA World Championship match. And I really thought that he was gonna win this. I thought Nick Nemeth is a really big get for TNA. They're gonna pull the trigger here and give him the World Championship. But no, Moose actually got the win here. I don't know how full-time Nick is with TNA. I know he's doing New Japan, so I don't know if he's there fully with TNA. Maybe that's why Moose won here. The match overall, it was okay. It was kind of forgettable, not gonna lie. It was decent, like I said, just not match of the night worthy or anything like that, but it was what it was. But the main talking point from this match is that right after the lights went out once again and broken Matt Hardy came back to TNA, attacked Moose, and posed with the TNA World Championship. It looks like we're getting Matt Hardy versus Moose feuding for the world title, which, my god. And this is coming from me, like I said, I like Matt Hardy. I preferred him over Jeff growing up because I was a weird kid, but Is he a world champion contender in 2024 using the broken gimmick as well? Do we really need the broken gimmick again? Matt Hardy has stated though that he is still a free agent, so as far as I'm aware, this is probably just going to be a one-off program, which again, I don't think they need to do. And I was saying before with Steph DeLanda and Cardona, I don't think they need to be getting people in on just one-off deals. They need to be retaining talent, getting an actual roster built up. I don't think having Matt Hardy come in for a month and take the world title hostage in a feud is really helping the company in any way. I could be wrong, he could end up signing full-time in the end if he doesn't go back to AEW or WWE doesn't pick him up, which I wouldn't be surprised to see him sign full-time with TNA, and I don't think that's a bad signing for TNA either. But let's not give him the World Championship just yet, okay? Anyway, something I also forgot to mention is that leading up to this show, they teased a lights out appearance and ended up technically having 3, as Matt Hardy returned after the lights went out, Sami Callihan returned after the lights went out, and the American football player I mentioned earlier, Shawn Merriman, he actually has lights out branding, like that's his kind of his brand, so I guess he was also a lights out tease. Outside of all the shenanigans, this was actually a pretty good show, and it kind of made me realize that this was kind of the most TNA show I've ever watched in my life. It had good wrestling, but it had loads of random shenanigans just thrown in there, as always. But I will say, even though this show was good, it feels like TNA is not headed in the right direction still. It feels like a step in the wrong direction. We don't need any more one-offs. We need a more stable main event scene. Get Josh Alexander back in there. Get Hammerstone up there. Get Bayley up there. Also, Mustafa Ali, once he loses the X Division Championship, he can also go up to the main event division or the World Title Division 2 and challenge for it. And also, the current TNA problem they have, which is a problem they've always had, is they can't retain talent. They're about to lose the Motor City Machine Guns now, who are apparently off to AEW, which is a really big loss. Alex Shelley was just world champion 3 months ago. But to be honest, I think that's an issue that's always going to be around. Unfortunately, they haven't overtaken AEW as the number 2 promotion like a lot of people thought they would or predicted they would, which I personally never saw happening. I don't know how anyone did see that happening. And whilst I think TNA is definitely in a better place than it was when it was Impact, it's still kind of just the same thing, but with different branding. Like, let's be real. No, I don't think TNA is dying like the title may suggest. It's just in the exact same spot it was in before. I don't think it will ever really go higher or lower than the level it's at right now. Anyway, that's it from me talking about TNA. Let me know in the comments what you think of the current state of TNA right now and what you thought of TNA Rebellion 2024 last night. Like I said, I thought it was a pretty good show, but still just a step in the wrong direction for TNA. Either way, that's it from me. Leave a like for more wrestling content and subscribe if you want to be the first one to see it. I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye, and keep on rolling.